the Skype to show the record button.
Yes.
Once that happens, we'll get started.
It's starting now, Chief.
Okay.
Okay.
So the recording started?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to start out with the exercise or the intro?
We'll start with the exercises. Okay, but
Okay.
you can present for me and then I'll do the exercise.
Welcome to the 21st NSTHA Global Women's Forum. So she's going to start out with the exercise as usual, and we'll get started.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So we need to explain over and over again because you guys are regulars. So we're starting with our usual and bring that energy up, pushing all that stuff to the surface. And we're going to do 3. Here we go. 1. 2. Still energy coming up from your feet, all the way up to your chest, all the way to the crown of the head. 2. I think that's 2. And 3. Okay. So prepare for the boost. Hands approximately 12 inches apart. And I'm raising the vibration. Let me know if you don't feel it. Okay. Very good. Now I'm going to increase that vibration for your boost. You should feel an increase in the vibration. Anyone not feeling it? Okay.
This is Sire. I'm not feeling it.
Okay, we'll put a focus on you. Put your hands just a little closer together.
I feel it now. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Very good. So we're going to take that energy and we're going to do our containment. So we're going to do 3, starting now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. And we're going to push that energy out. Clear our space. Clear the forum. Okay. Very good, everyone. So we're going to get, this is part 2 of the shorts that was on the Disney Channel. And Mrs.A is going to start us off.
Yes. So as we're just going to start off with the short video called Float, and we're just going to talk about it because it's strictly found on Disney Plus. So for those of you who have Disney Plus, you can watch it. And
yeah, we don't want to do any copyright.
Yeah, the other things were
by showing something that's exclusive to
Yeah.
their channel. So all we can do is actually just literally just discuss it, and hopefully not most of you have seen the shorts that we're going to cover.
Yeah, there's like images on, just Google that are showing the child floating, and just going to talk about certain questions that were submitted by clients and then how that's seen from a Neo Shamanic perspective.
Okay.
Okay. So the first question I will do is the question is about the concept of floating, and it says, when a consciousness has gifts, does that mean they are a light being? Like, for example, this kid can float.
Okay. No, that doesn't mean that the person is a light being just because they have gifts. There are those of you, including myself, who've been around individuals who've had certain talents as far as like in the music industry history, even in film, and you could say that there are a lot of those individuals that don't reflect anything that looks like light at all. But they can sing, they can dance, they can, perform or act, but that doesn't mean that they're light. So I think that the question stems from something I said I believe in one of the sessions, having to do with creativity is something that's very natural to the universe. So with that said, it's something that stems from light, but as consciousness is from Supreme Consciousness universe, but you see what's happened to so many of those consciousness in this realm, that they've been very, very much contaminated, intoxicated, and short through bad behavior and all of that. So again, just because something is from Supreme Consciousness universe does not mean that it is light, especially in this realm. And, this realm is primarily about destroying consciousness. So when it comes to talents and things of that sort, density always found it useful to use something that attracts a lot of attention from other consciousness as a way to tune up those consciousness, or tune up the food, open that food up so that it can consume the energy of those beings. So what was the other thing that primarily, what, this talents?
It just says gifts or talents. And you were talking about the whole concept of the word gift is as if, someone, from on high gave it to you.
Yeah, it's, as far as the concept, the word gift, there's some of the question talking about loaded words. Again, there's a lot of words that can be considered loaded words, and gifts can be considered that at times also. I've even talked about people giving gifts as a means to control individuals or manipulate individuals. The whole gift thing, from my experience, generally stems from religious concepts. That there's this, cloud being that gives you everything, and if you have something that's, that's really, really, great or beautiful, or a talent that's really, really great, it's not part of you. It's something that's been given to you from something separate from yourself. Now, if you are consciousness in the universe, those gifts are part of you as a consciousness. People who have a hard time expressing themselves creatively tend to be individuals who've been shut down more than the individuals who actually have this ability to express themselves, as far as talent-wise. So with that said, I think that's...
Yes, we can move on to the next one that has, yes, of course. The next one has to do with when you said loaded words. It says, is the word normal a loaded word?
Yeah, definitely. Who decides what's normal? And everyone has their family units that they grew up, in. And usually when you become a young adult, or you get out on your own, and you meet people separate from the family units, extended family, or people that you grew up with, you'll find that these individuals' concept of normal is different from your concept of normal. So, yeah, it's a loaded word. There's no real normal. There are things that people do on the regular, but it's still not the concept of what's normal. I'm not a normal person, or the kid in the short video, he's not normal. When you look at a clutch of individuals standing there saying, I'm normal, but then when you go in and start to focus on each individual, you find out that their concepts of normal tend to be very different from one another.
Thanks, Chief. The next question is, what makes a consciousness a light being?
Lack of density, really. It depends as to there are individuals who are here who are considerably older than other consciousness who are here. The older ones tend to be able to hang on to what I could say their light for a lot longer than those who are younger, who are more naive, who came in or got pulled into this realm at a much younger, age. Lack of another word for it, at a much younger age, when they didn't have as much experience out in the outer universe before they got pulled into this or trapped into this. So a lot of times, and I'm not going to say straight across the board, but most times when I run into individuals who have a lot more light, they tend to be a lot older consciousness. But with that said, they have a lot of damage as well. So it's like, it's not like you can just totally just open yourself up to someone because they seem light, because you're opening yourself up to someone whose avatar also has been created in this realm that has all of this density that's riddled through it, but their light is, is strong enough for them to keep trying to push through, to keep trying to be balanced. But you deal with them, and at some point, a glitch will show up, and next thing you know, wow, these individuals have contamination, and everyone in this realm does. So I would just say light individuals tend to be consistent in their behavior. Even if it's really something really stressing, they tend to fight very hard to stay balanced. Or even I appreciate individuals who were having a really bad day, so to speak, and they warn you that I'm having a really bad day. You might not want to be around me just now. Mm-hmm. That's a sign of someone who's more light, because someone who's dense, they want you to walk into this crap storm that's going on around them, and they will inevitably feed off of you as well as their attachments and so on. They try to, it's almost like they're waiting for you to walk into their trap. Someone who's light will just like, you might want to stay clear. I'm not interested in blowing up and puking all over, everybody who comes near me. So.
Thank you, Chief. And the last question for Float is it an attachment that makes this kid fly, or like, for example, the different types of what kids are like, diagnosed as autism are not always what they think it is. Do you have any thoughts about that?
So that question was that someone trying to make a different statement?
Yes, they made a statement, so I'm trying to rectify it by asking a bit more to make that question fleshed out, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. And you're probably going to address the statement thing.
I will.
One of the things with statements is that when if your questions include a statement, it's almost like whatever is maybe an MC trying to lead me into answering in other words, agreeing with the statement or something like that. It's almost like it's like trying to direct me into a certain direction. That's not really all that useful. So what I tend to do is to just basically knock down the statement. As far as the kid, this movie, this video, as well as movies, are always symbolic of something. So the kid, you really can't put a Neo Shamanic spin on it from your own perspective. That's why it's like, as the chief, the women's forum, and so on, that's my forte. I know how to put that spin. I know how to reach in there and grab the meaning of certain things and understand that certain things are just symbolic. So there is a video, I believe, that of the guy who made the video, who directed the video, and it had to do with his son who has autism. So autism has to do with attachments and so on and so forth, but his son had autism, and so he was trying some poetic way to express the difficulties that his son has with this affliction, and how he felt, earlier on, feeling like he and his wife had created a defective human being.
Yeah.
A defective human being. So it literally was his personal, say, contribution to what he felt to other people who have this type of situation with children who have certain afflictions, or basically, again, I would say 9 times out of 10, some serious attachments. So as far as like whether it was an attachment that made the kid float, it doesn't really, I wouldn't say that. It would be something that would, try to think of a word.
I have some thoughts if you.
But Mrs.A, go ahead.
So those of you who submit questions, the best way to approach when you want to make a question, maybe like a Neo Shamanically slant to the question, try not to force the video into a Neo Shamanic perspective. Just look at it and see what you can see, and then see how what you've learned about your own behavior, and then around other people's behavior, and then you can even reference the book. Just look at the book, Chief's book, My Neo Shamanic Journey. If the more you read it, the more it may inspire you to actually ask questions in a different way. Also, it's the attitude in which you ask a question. It's how you can ask a really good question. And most of you submit really great questions, and your intent is very genuine. But sometimes when Chief was talking about assumptions, it means like assumptions that I know what you're talking about, Chief. I know what attachments are. I know what MCs are. I know what, fragments are. I know what loops are. But instead of assuming you know what they are, because if just like what I said in the 20th Women's Forum about Chief knows more than you could ever imagine. He's the one who created the meaning behind the attachment. He changed the meaning of the normal English word, and he gave a meaning to mirror consciousness. He gave a meaning to fragments. He gave a meaning to loops, and we only know a fragment of that wisdom. So come at it as a student. Don't come at it as I'm a knowledgeable person. Just come at it as I'm a student. I'm ready to learn, Chief. I'm ready to follow. And those who ask questions in that way, they get the most out of it, and they mature the fastest, and they grow the most healthy.
Yeah, I totally second that. There has been a tendency for certain clients to want to practice what I'm teaching. And I've had to tell a number of you that don't start trying to practice what I'm teaching you, and definitely don't do it without telling me that's what you're doing. And there's been several of you who've run into trouble doing that. And if you're still doing that kind of nonsense, you're going to cause trouble for yourself. You are not me, and you never will be. To make you a better you, so you can protect yourself. Don't, flounce around and I'm going to heal my family and all of this. You're not qualified. Okay? So again, anyone who thinks that they can come anywhere near being like me, you're fooling yourselves. That's why we're getting to this whole thing, just to get it, through people's heads. But they say, call the chief an alien, okay? Because you can't do what I do. Be a good student, be a good client. Be a good student, you'll be better off than you've ever been in your life, but don't try to be me. So when I get certain questions like that, I feel that there's some little MC in there that still wants to, see if they can be me. And I said this a long time ago. I don't need comrades who think that they can stand side by side with me in this battle. I've never met anyone who can figure out the things that I figured out and make them work effectively in the way that I make them work. So that is your example. I make it work. I can hit you with energy from all over the planet from where I'm standing. And I don't feel this sucking kind of feeling like me draining you, because I got a lot of juice. And why would I want contaminated energy in my energy. My energy is not contaminated. I'm pushing the contamination out of you. So if you think you're going to heal someone doing what I do, and you're still, and again, it takes a long time to get saturated the way that people get saturated. I still have things that purge out of my avatar from being in this system.
And Chief, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
You first, Chief.
But anyway, just to put a closure on it. I can teach you how to assist in whatever energy work that you're doing, but don't get ahead of yourself. Don't ever think that you can be the sensei. And you see this in a lot of different venues, even a lot of these Asian movies and kung fu movies. There's always the sensei, and you never see the students trying to elbow the sensei out of the way unless it's some bad guy who thinks he's a sensei, and in the end, what happens to him? He gets his ass kicked. I'm the sensei, you are the students. You're the clients. I'll teach you a lot, and a lot more than you've ever known and have ever imagined you could know before you got involved with my movement. Do it right, and you'll benefit royally from it. Do it wrong, you're just going to stunt your growth. Okay, Mrs.A?
Yes, Chief. Even if clients feel like, oh man, I'm kind of nervous about asking questions, even if the questions are weird, it's good to tell on yourself to the chief, like to expose whatever your issue is by just trying. So it's better to try than not to, because some clients are so afraid to ask questions and realize that they can never be the chief, that they don't ask questions, or they try to get other people to ask their questions for them. And that's very not cool, and it won't help you mature. It'll actually stunt your growth.
Yeah, it's like hanging on to an illusion of oneself. That's one thing I like to just murder in everybody their fantasies that they picked up from this realm of what they'd like to be, which is always something other than themselves. I'm about you being solid within who you are and realizing that you work hard enough, you can get to be this really amazing consciousness that you were meant to be from the first time you were created in this realm. Not in this realm, but in the universe. So with that, we can,
There's
if you have something else to add.
just one last thing. I saw an image of just that came to me when it came to someone's, like, people's struggle when it comes to facing the reality of themselves. And what I saw was a young child in the background, and it was all in darkness. And then in the front, I saw an image of them as they are in their current age. And they were like, they're imagining about themselves, their fantasy about themselves is that I'm large and in charge. But then they try to put you, Chief, in a box. And then whenever they feel like they're running low on luck, or they feel like they're running on hard times, they come rub the box and give compliments. And then try to take that luck and then I'm large and in charge and no, I don't need anybody. And then rub the box. And I'm just like, no, you can never master containment. You can never master the things that Chief is teaching, because he is the creator of it. It's best just to be a student, like Chief said. And that's all I have to say about the topic.
Yeah.
We can move on to the next video, if that's okay, Chief.
Yeah, well, as far as, again, with the float, it's kind of light there, and again, it's an interpretation of this guy, I think in some way probably feeling guilty about the way he felt about his kid and the kid's affliction, so he, this is like an ode to his child, and probably the mother of the kid as well, So it's not all that super original. I've seen it done in various ways, where someone wants the kid to feel like he's not an outcast, or he's not the odd person out, or he's not a misfit. know. And if you really look at it in a real, like I said, Neo Shamanic way, everyone has an affliction in this realm, because that's what this realm is about. You come in, here's your affliction. And what I teach is how to destroy and get rid of those afflictions. So anyway.
Yeah, and it was an interesting depiction of people's struggles with what they think about other people and what they think about,
Yeah,
being
what other people think about them.
criticized. I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
don't
go
know if I
ahead.
said that right. I'm a little sleepy.
No, I'm not correcting, but I'm just co-signing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just it was kind of showing kind of the weird struggle it is between parent and children, because the parent, he's showing that his own struggles with feeling like his kid is weird, and then the kid not making it easier by throwing a temper tantrum in the middle of public, which would make him feel even worse.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if that's how this guy raises his kids. I do recall when I started seeing a lot of this stuff in media, like on TV shows, that it was like a certain, I don't know if we call it group, were trying to dictate to the masses what it was to raise children. And then there were these shows, some were these Disney shows. I never really had much patience for those types of things. I just watched sometimes just to see if my kids were watching. And children throwing tantrums, being obstinate to parents, and so on and so forth. I know that we talked about that a bit. And you're saying, well, a kid being stubborn, to a parent that's really, like off their nut. Yeah, maybe some method of, something inside of that kid, which again, children are not little children. They're actually consciousness in a small package. And some of them are older than you are that, you've given birth to, or this illusion of birth to. So understanding also that children is just another illusion in which an older consciousness is within. And I talked about how kids can be really more connected to the other side when they're really, really young, or seeing things and not feeling afraid of these things that may walk into their bedroom at night, because they haven't yet gotten to the point of the programming of being afraid of these things. So again, with the whole concept of children and how I look at how they package this idea of children, I'm not moved. Someone said, "Oh, for the little children." What about the innocent children? Yeah, if you got the blinders on and you're drinking the Kool-Aid and you believe what the system tells you, yeah, you think that children are innocent. But if you ever really, really check them out, and I'm quite sure that all of you have been around kids that you just can't stand. I don't care how old they are. They could be like a toddler, a year old. And it's like something about that kid. Because it's a consciousness that's in a small package, and the process of the feeding that goes on with, aging and all that other stuff. All that stuff is involved in this. So I'm not sure exactly if I'm really clear on that, but anyone has any questions, for clarification, just feel free to ask me to clarify anything that I'm saying that you're not really sure about. And don't be afraid like I'm going to beat you up. I'm not really into beating people up that much, but anyway.
And usually, Chief, what they feel the beating up is actually their attachments getting beaten up. And
yeah.
if someone has already fused or merged with those attachments, then that's when they feel it more intensely, as if they are being beaten up because they have become either part of it or one with it. It just depends.
Yeah, right. That's true. Exactly what they were saying. So.
Because you've taught us, Chief, all kinds of things, and what's really interesting is to understand that, like when Chief said, there are no walls. And so if you think about attachment, definitions are about walls. So realizing, like what you taught us, Chief, about how mirror consciousness can become attachments. Fragments can become attachments. People can become one with their attachments, one with their MCs, one with their fragments. It's not like this attachment is separate from you sometimes. Sometimes it's so affected your perspective, so affected your life that it's not like something like that's like taking an organ out. It affects every, like,
Yeah, every
fiber of your being. Yeah.
Very good. And again, people have a hard time, I'm saying all the time, deciphering at times, what's an attachment and what's something that they can integrate within themselves. So as Mrs.A was saying about MCs, and I think that's in the book, that an MC can become an attachment because you're feeding it. So if you're afraid of certain things and you don't want others to feel that you're afraid of certain things, then you're creating this denial and you're feeding the thing, that's causing the fear. You're not facing it. And therefore, every time you protect it and you pretend that you don't have this fear, or you try to pretend that you're confident when you're not confident, you're feeding something, some false persona that is growing within you. And it becomes an issue after a certain point. And the cool thing, as far as like having the sessions, I'll see it when it pops its head up, because things get big enough, they can't hide in the same box after a while, because if you feed anything, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then to the point where it's very much obvious. And then I'll bring the hammer down, not to destroy you, but to destroy that thing that has become an attachment. But again, it's about really looking at it. And I know that there's a number of you who actually have really gotten into really understanding that you have to look at these things. You have to look at the things that you're afraid of and admit that you're afraid of these particular things. There's times you're not even sure what you're afraid of until something happens. And usually that's why it's good to have the sessions, because if you have this pop up and you have no one who knows what this realm is about, you're just stuck with it. And what Mrs.A was saying, there are individuals who come and have a session, and I get that, donating to the temple, it's a little bit of cash. Some it's easy for them to give those donations on the regular. Some maybe not so easy. But if you're amongst the individuals, the clients who are not even on the forums, so that's another thing. There are individuals saying, oh, this client's on the forum. That's bullshit. I got a lot of fucking clients, but they're not on the forum for whatever reason. And a lot of the time, it has to do with the struggles, with the density inside of them that doesn't want them, to get that straight bump when I give you that bump of energy. Because every time I give you that bump of energy, it makes it harder for the density to, infiltrate your energy. As long as you're doing what I tell you to do, you can keep yourself protected and continue to build up your force field against those things. But if you're, having these ideas and these illusions that you still want to be real of who you think you are, again, who is not who you really are, because the system tells you that you're not okay. Nothing about you is okay. You know what's going to make you okay is to be like somebody else. And I guarantee you, if you're looking at individuals who are actors and musicians and singers and so on and so forth, and you want to be like them, you have no idea what kind of a shit existence they have behind the glitz. So again, anyway, we can just move on before I get too.
Chief, I have a question. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Mrs.A.
No problem.
Is it okay to kind of live by this quote, honesty is the best policy, when it comes to having sessions with you? Because I know I'm personally, for me, I'm afraid to tell you certain things or get embarrassed, but I have to remind myself, if I'm honest, then it will help with my healing.
Yes, but have you ever seen me make fun of you when you were, you said that something makes you feel embarrassed? Do you ever feel that I'm judging you?
No.
There you go. I don't judge. You know, I'm serious about this. I'm not petty. I'm not of this nonsensical realm of pettiness. I don't get anything out of that. My energy is great, man. People who want to mess with you like that, they're feeding off of your energy. You know, and your energy has a lot of additives to it. So what do I need with the additives? I'm in there pushing all that additives, all those additives, all that toxicity out of your energy, and I'm using my energy to do it. So yes, honesty with me is the best policy. Honesty with density is not the best policy. Because they're looking for an end. They're looking for some way to trip you up. And you never totally know until you really are one with your empathic abilities. And that you pay attention when you feel somebody's funny. Someone's energy feels funny. And know that your consciousness is being honest with you. Okay?
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome. I'm done with that.
Okay. Whew, my eyes started watering. Okay, so I think we'll go on to 20-something.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna move to the next.
Okay. So 20-something, and as you, if you have seen the video, it's about, it looks like, it's very interesting short video. It does have a lot of things that can be understood from a Neo Shamanic perspective. Some videos, they don't have anything. Some do have a little bit. So if you really are curious, you can go on the website, theneoshamanic.com. There's a part of, if you look under the tab, the Women's Forum, there is a movie rating system, NSTHA movie rating system. It will tell you how much Neo-Shamanic information can be gleaned from those videos, and you'll be able to have a better concept of what can be understood from that perspective.
Yeah, in other words, how much information that I deem as useful in a Neo-Shamanic way, that you can learn something from. There's a lot of stuff, as Mrs.A says, it's just fluff. You know, and it's just literally subliminal messages that, you know, just to keep you tuned up for this realm and for the feeding frenzy that's been going on for a very, very long time. So you want to get into
Yes.
okay.
So first you see what looks like what's interesting, because the woman, she's supposed to look like this, but inside she feels like this. She's has a 16-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So 10, and then 16-year-old and a 1-year-old. So
I don't think there's any numerology involved in it.
no, I just thought it was interesting that it wasn't like something you could just like add up the fragments, you know, and to equal 21 or something.
No, because if you add them up to like 27.
Yes, and it actually says more about people's real age mentally. They can be literally like 1 year old at times. There's like 10, they act like they're 10 years old at times. They act like they're 16 years old at times. Just depending on whatever fragment or MC or attachment is coming to the fore.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. You know, there's nothing that you can just cover with just one, you know, one stroke of a brush. There are individuals who have attachments that are in there in such a way that you can see their eyes change when, depending on what you're talking about. Sometimes you can just say a trigger word to them, and all of a sudden, you know, you can just see this glitch go on, and next thing you know, even the whole physical persona of the person will change, as well as how the eyes look. You realize that you're talking to someone else, and when you were talking to someone that you were familiar with before. All of a sudden, there's this other individual in there, and a lot of this happens with people who suffer from dementia, older folks who suffer from dementia, where depending on how broken down their doors are, they become a turnstile. And there's a lot of stories with folks, they can't figure out who their mother or their father was, units were, are from moment to moment almost. So there's times when the individuals get close to, dear old mom to, her do something, and then she slugs them in the face. This is common amongst individuals who have to deal with parental units who are suffering from dementia. Things get in there and just just really wreak havoc. So anyhow, there's various ways that things will come in and influence a person. And there are times, yeah, it's NC that will influence something, that wants to hold on to a past idea or past feeling or something like that, or some past, what we call past illusion. Go ahead, Mrs.A.
So one of the questions was, are these depicting attachments taking over her avatar? Does she think they're her own personality?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. Again, if you as a kid, no one's telling you anything because that's the way it's meant to be here within the system. They don't want to tell you how to get out of the system or how to figure out the game that you've been born into. So you're around folks who don't know jack. Any answer for certain people is to pray or something. And you can ask a ton of folks, how much of that, how's that work for you? You might get a handful say, oh, prayer really don't get it. But as a mass, no, it doesn't really work. They give you something that's not going to help you figure out what's going on. So as far as you're gonna ask
the question.
Read the question again, because
are they considered attachments taking over her avatar? Mm-hmm. Does she think that they are her own personality?
Yeah. Well, again, yes. She probably thinks that they're her own personality. And yes, there are either are attachments or NCs. Depending, these, as they show in the video, these seem to be little entities that have been with her, all of her, her expression this time. Sometimes even from past expressions. But there are those occasions when I talk about, and which is interesting that this takes place in a club, where with club, there tends to be a lot of drinking going on, which it was Disney cleaned up, because they're not showing that, in this, that there's a lot of drinking and altering one's sense of themselves and making themselves vulnerable to random things that may be stronger than the things that were normally controlling you, that will come in and elbow them out of the way, and next thing you know, you got another personality in there. So yes and yes, to that question. There's attachments, MCs, sometimes walk-ins, whatever, that can influence a person if they don't know what this world is about. And yes, she feels, because it said, well, you're just being weird. You are being weird, not the thing that's in you being, is being weird. But because you think that it's you start to protect, because you get, you feel insecure when someone's challenging what's in you, but they're actually, they are challenging you, but they're not aware that this is an attachment that is influencing your behavior. So you end up, it's kind of like brilliant the way density works, because they confuse you into thinking that all the crap that they're throwing on you is you. It's like rolling around in a briar patch or with the little, little birds that get on you, and then you go walking around, and they said, "Wow, you got a lot of birds on you." But you said, "Oh, I don't see any birds." You pick this stuff up in this ground, and the whole concept of idea is to get you to accept this as you, to the point where folks have a question: how can I change myself when it's something else that's changing or influencing you or pushing you down? And because you've been weakened to the point where you don't think you have control, they push you around. And I have clients who get pushed around, have gotten pushed around by their density, by their attachments. Come in 1 week, we do something, and some new item that I'm using, And then they come in the next week and they said, hey, is that a new item? I said, no, we used it on you last week. Because that same person didn't come walking through the door. Something else came walking through the door. Somebody just knew how to get to my house, that's all. So anyway,
Yes, Chief. I remember you were teaching us about mirror consciousness. They can come from a traumatic experience. And for example, the story doesn't show what kind of traumatic experience happened. They don't, except for that these characters, they could fit fragments in the way that they're obviously separate little parts. And they have their own little traumatic loops, which one was that the 10-year-old broke all the furniture and couldn't put stuff together. And the 16-year-old, her little loop of trauma was that she crashed the car, and it just kept playing in their minds because they could pull it up on a dime in their minds about what traumatic situation. So they could see the car wreck, they could see the tow truck, all the details because it was still alive in their energy.
yeah, it's like a loop, as they said, or even sometimes we call it a snapshot of something. But yeah, it's literally a loop that we play all the time to the point where I'm deficient, I can't drive, I crashed the car. Accidents are not accidents. Again, I would reiterate that. But what was the 10-year-old thing?
The 10-year-olds thing is interesting because you were talking about, Chief, how sometimes people feel like they had their thoughts together more so when they were a child than when they grew older. But sometimes it's like when they're a kid, they think that they have the world figured out, or they hope they do. And then when they turn 16, they realize it's nothing like, they thought it was. And so then it's interesting that the 16-year-old seems to be much more insecure than the 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm. And I would say with the 10-year-old, whether they meant it in the script or not, the 10-year-old's prepubescent. So, there's when a person reaches puberty, there's all kinds of shifting that goes on in that person's body, energetically, consciously. I had 5 sisters, 4 surviving, and each of them, when they went through puberty, it was a mess. Just this, emotional thing, just crying and don't even know why they're crying, and so on and so forth, to the point where it's just like really frustrating. So I'm not going to get into what puberty is, and now that I mentioned it, it's something that I haven't really gotten into much detail on, but it is something that is like a scheduled shift that goes even deeper than this, having to do with individuals' interest in young children and the energy of young children, opposed to someone who's reached puberty, then all of a sudden they're not interested in that energy anymore, because whatever the prepubescent energy, there are theories about it, but the prepubescent energy is definitely different from the post-pubescent energy. So, did I leave that off somewhere? Or?
No, I mean, we can. There'll be plenty of time to have plenty of opportunities to cover anything because there's quite a few questions for this particular video.
Yes.
Chief, may I ask a question? Because you talked about this shift in energy when children hit puberty. I was wondering, how is it for like pedophiles, for people who are attracted to children? Are they attracted to their energy, or what? Yeah, what are they?
In most cases, from what I, my studies and what I, gleaned just from just looking at it, pedophiles is what we're talking about. Tend to have a certain type of ghoulish energy of the very, and again, it's a little bit, it's like their own little category of feeding and what they want to feed on. And there are those who feel that young children have a much stronger energy than someone who goes through puberty. I mean, if we want, we can do a muscle test to see, what answers we can get. This would be a first for me, just even look into it using, just using muscle testing. So I have a sense of it, but there's so many different little pieces to everything in this world that you can't just like cover everything with, like I said, with one brush. So, okay, I'm going to just do a screen first. So I guess one question would be, well, actually, if you can give me the highlights of the question you were asking, then I can just answer those.
So I was wondering if, like, people were attracted to children, if it's because of their energy that
Okay,
children have.
Start with that. Okay. Something's already blocking. You might want to lay down for this. Might get interesting.
Okay.
All right. Again. So I would say that whatever we're picking up with the conversation has to do with this subject matter. And as I say, they basically eavesdrop on everybody they can. So, okay. Let's see. From, so, yes, it is due to the energy of the children. They consider that energy a stronger energy. So, their whole thing has to do with a feeding. It's like, I would say that it is a euphoria, an energetic euphoria for those who are into that type of thing. So, it's like the image in the Matrix turning, everyone into a battery. That these little beings, little children, are considered just these energetic batteries. But some of the, individuals, and there are a lot of people who come from different countries who will come to Thailand and get involved with, pedophilia because of the poverty. There's like this disparity. So there are those who are really, really poor, and then there are those who have, a lot more, resources. So those who are really poor will literally sell their children, this way. And sometimes they actually go and hunt these guys down. And a lot of them were so old and gnarly, these guys, that you wonder if they were even able to actually rise to the occasion to do what they were doing. So they're just literally like ghouls who are feeding off the energy of children. And there's been, movies that talk about young virgins, that whole thing, a certain type of energy that's not being contaminated by some other man. Or a lot of things have to do with, with children charging up, the energy of ruins and sites that density likes to visit and tap that energy. So there's been occasions, as far as like I might have mentioned some time ago, in Egypt, when the younger sister unit used to, go there quite a bit, and at one of the major pyramids, like the Giza pyramids, they had cut it off to the general public, but then buses came in full of children, prepubescent children, and they took them into the pyramid. Also, I think it was the year before last, there was something going on like that even here in Thailand at one of the, in Chiang Mai, I believe it's in Chiang Mai, the one temple where they had all these children sitting, in front of one of the temples. And that all had to do with charging up the energy of these particular places, with the energy of the children. Their energetic avatars, I should say. So what was the follow-up, the second part of that question?
Well, I think that's it, but now I'm wondering if there is any physical attraction to children for them, or just purely energetic.
Yeah, I would say that there's a physical attraction as well. And sometimes, there's like this weird thing having to do with the innocent. Individuals who, children are victimized. So again, they come in early with some awareness of where they came from, and after they get that beaten out of them, then they become, they compartmentalize their memory and so on and so forth. Then they become these little, not really aware beings. There are kids who are still just little demons, and they will always be little demons who seem to be a little, too precocious at times. Which is nothing wrong with precociousness, but it's a type of precociousness with certain little kids. There are children who have a sexual energy that these guys are interested in. So if you pay attention to any children that you're around and without looking at them like, children are to be seen, not heard, or something like that, you will notice the difference in certain kids. That there are, little kids who just seem like little kids. And then there are little kids who seem a little bit too adult for a little kid. So there's that, like I said, there's a lot of different, aspects to this whole thing. So yeah, there are times that guys, are attracted to, young girls for whatever reason. Some about victimizing, some are really uncomfortable, because I've seen gorgeous little young girls, and I'm like, whoa. So, to the point where I just like, I'm not even going to look there, because there's something wrong with whatever this energy is that this young person is exuding. And I've had men who aren't, into that, who are talking about, these certain little girls, and then they see a kid, and they don't see the, little girl. This one, no, it's just a kid. It's just a kid. What the hell, Then there's this one thing. What the hell's going on with that? Why am I getting this kind of energy from that? So again, to be honest with, that's, there are young children that exude some sexuality that seems to predate, their age. And then there are kids who are not kids. Last thing you think about is as a sexual object, unless you're someone who is strictly into pedophilia. So
some people say that it's because they like something that's non-threatening.
Yeah, there are some that, non-threatening. Some like to victimize. So there's all these different, things that motivate certain individuals to behave in a certain way. So they can do whatever they want to these children and not feel like they have to, be worried about, being challenged by these children. And a lot of times they will threaten the kids, if there's someone who's not in their family, will threaten the kid to not tell anyone, or even to the point where, if you tell anyone, I'll kill your whole family. And it's a little kid, and they're afraid already of this person, and they will believe them. So, okay, we're gonna get back. Yes, thank you. All right.
All right, so the next question is, How does holding on to versions of your childhood self hold you back?
Very, it's like what I talk about having to do with loops. So remembering, it's like, and they do this in media a lot. Remember the good times, or, and so on. Or I've talked about relationships that, after a certain point, things always get to be a little less exciting than they were when you first started, your relationship with whoever you're having a relationship with. It inevitably, tapers off. So if you're not into the romantic illusions, you can generally hang in there for a good while with one another. And if you really, like, I would say, aware in the way that I'm training to be aware, you should be able to, continue a relationship and understand if it's time to split, it's time to split also. But when it comes to, what is it, like, holding on to memories, it's literally just pulling you backwards, and and holding on to a loop or a snapshot because you're convinced, something convinces you that you have to collect all of those little good times that you think are good times, because in reality the good times are the stressful times, in other words, take up a whole lot of your space, and the good times take up less. So they're grasping after what they consider to be good times because they're afraid that there may never be any good times in the future. So what it does, it holds you back, and in this place, while your consciousness is still moving forward and learning things. But if you think about this, the maturity that you're gaining will go back to a childish behavior or a childish way of looking at something. So it's always good to just burn that stuff. Get rid of those loops. Get rid of those snapshots. Because in the end, this is only an illusion anyway. And when you transition out at the end of, if you're going that whole lifespan or whatever, at the end of it, you're gone, and all the stuff you accumulated and gathered and had, felt it had worth, it doesn't have any worth anymore. You can't take it with your consciousness, and it's best to not try. So if that makes sense. Okay.
Okay, Chief. So then, would you like me to go on to the next question?
Yeah, unless you have something to add to it, you feel that I might have glanced over something.
No, Chief. I just think that don't rule out the possibility that there is some version of yourself or what you think is yourself that you still hold on to in ways that you can't imagine. Because usually there's blocks or walls inside of your energy. And personally, in my opinion, in my own experience, Chief was the only one who was able to identify the wall that I'm staring at but can't see. Because for sometimes in my own energy, I'm looking at this wall and I feel like there's something holding me back, but I can't see anything. It's just dark and there's a wall. But when I listen to Chief, even if he has to raise his voice to knock the wall down, I have to be like what Sayer says, honesty is the best policy with Chief. And just tell him, I feel like I'm lacking in this area. I feel, like, for example, fear. A lot of people want to act like, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. That means you are afraid if you have to tell people that you're not.
Yeah, that goes along with individuals who say, I don't care what people think about me. But they do it vehemently that I don't care what people think about me. And the attitude alone tells you that they totally care what people think about me. But were you finished with what you were saying?
Just one more thing.
Okay, go ahead.
There are a lot of cues, like verbal cues, in which you can tell that an attachment or MC or a program or fragment is talking through your face, through your mouth, and they'll say certain things habitually. like for me, I would try to tell Chief, like, well, I don't know how, or I really want to, but it was coming from a very feeling like I'm already defeated, but not knowing it, just denying that I feel defeated in some way. And so when Chief would teach me, when you say this phrase here, you are feeding this fear, you are feeding this attachment, you are feeding this MCs. So if you have you could observe yourself and notice that you say certain phrases commonly. You can write those phrases down, and when you have a session with Chief, read those phrases and ask Chief, is this a part of me? Am I fused with something dense? Is this an attachment? Is this an MC? Oh, how do I what other ways can I identify this program with, especially maybe like how you say things? Because if an attachment or MC or some kind of density inside of you has free access to use your mouth whenever it wants to, that means that you are feeding it, you are encouraging it, you are holding on to it. If it actually talks to you and then you say, no, I don't want to say that, it means it has a little bit less control, but obviously it isn't gone. So, and Chief, a lot of things Chief, only Chief can pull out, but you have to do your part at identifying when it's trying to feed through your own face.
Yeah, you can subdue it. And what they were saying about saying, I don't know how, whatever, that becomes a mantra. So, you know how mantras work. It's like repeating something over and over and over again to get it into your energy, into your very essence. And if you don't, you just feel like it's just normal. Say, well, I don't know how. Or what was the other term you were using? Other than I don't know how, I don't know, or I can't. These become mantras. If this is something that comes up, on the regular, especially if there's something that that's challenging about you shifting yourself. So something that you do have some sense or ability to comprehend what I'm saying, but the attachment, or primarily, usually there's very few attachments, if none, in my clients after a certain point of time. So we're dealing with the things that they have inside that feed what I call the NCs, that will inevitably, like they said, just through your mouth almost, you don't even think about it. I can't. I don't know how. Or it's too difficult. These are mantras. And you probably say them more than the mantras I give you. So there's this battle going on. They say, well, I'm checking out your mantras and so on and so forth, your affirmations and so on. I'm still having to struggle with it. I anything that has to do with you not being able to accomplish something or take control of your whole avatar, your whole being. You realize you are the central consciousness in there, and there are individuals who sidled up, against you and just have you thinking that, it's like looking in the mirror and thinking that you're actually looking at yourself, when 9 times out of 10, there's something else looking back at you behind that image of yourself in the mirror. That is sometimes separate from you, but there's a lot of times, if you stare at that mirror long enough, you're going to see something that is actually on you or inside of your energy. Not to freak you out, but
Reality is reality.
Reality is reality.
Yes. And also, Chief was teaching us about how not to just say mantras as if that alone is going to move you forward, because that's like she was saying, you can't climb a ladder and skip any of the rungs of the ladder. You can't just rush forward and think, oh, I'm externally saying it, but I don't really believe it inside. And you have to ask Chief, do I really believe it inside? Because some people, they say, oh yeah, I'm consciousness first, but they're not. There's something else.
No, yeah, they're just, saying it, and they're used to saying it to people who aren't sensitive. So I can tell when someone's, just saying it, just to say it, excuse me, they're not being honest with themselves, and definitely not honest with me. So, you know, I am consciousness first, and then I'm not feeling it, Mrs.A, just for verification for the client. Bam, no, you're not feeling it. You know, you don't believe that you're a consciousness first. You're just doing what kids will do to try to get an adult off their back, which is basically why, you know. Did you break that glass? And you didn't see me break that glass. You know, no, I didn't break the glass. There's only two of us in the house. I know I didn't break it. So it's very, you know, it's like this child that comes up. It is very, very illogical. And a lot of people don't give a shit about what you think and how you feel. But if you're dealing with me in these sessions, this is what I'm about, to delve in to the things that are blocking your ascension. So as, Sire said, it is, as you asked, it is best to be honest when you're in my sessions with me. And there's nobody that I've dealt with who can say that I've taken advantage of anything that they've told me. Because it gives me more to work with when I don't have to say, I know they're holding stuff in and as Mrs.A will know, if we discuss some cases, like this person has this big elephant sitting in the living room, and they don't want to acknowledge it. And until they acknowledge it, there's going to be this circular thing, and I'm going to have to clean around the elephant until you let go of the damn thing. I can't force you to let go of something. You have to let go of it willingly. So can't you just snatch it out of my hands? Not if you keep grabbing it and pulling it back into the same spot.
Finding a replacement.
Or finding a replacement, yeah. So.
Thanks, Chief. Should I go on to the next question?
Yeah, go on to the
Okay.
next question.
Does this video project programming about defining what adult life is? For example, depicting certain descriptions of what success is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is. It's to tell you the truth, it's like it seems like it's talking about rites of passage.
Want me to read those? Show the images?
Yeah, you can show them.
Yeah. So as Chief was talking about, as we were talking about with this 10-year-old specifically, this fragment or whatever it is, she says some things that are concerning because it's her perspective of how to mature from a 10-year-old's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, we are a beautiful, strong, mature 21-year-old woman. We are going to shake our bottom on that dance floor. We're going to stay up past our bedtime and to kiss our youth goodbye, because this is Gia's night, and like that's what you were talking about, Chief.
Yeah, it's like a really extremely wrong kind of rites of passage. It's extremely superficial, and that's the density program telling you that doing these superficial things that are not really helping for you. They don't talk about the alcohol consumption that goes on in these places as something that in other words alters your sense of yourself. They see, I'm going to walk into this area where all these strangers are. I got my buddy or whatever, who has her little friends that she probably, deals with and that she knows from the club. But she's walking in there and she's looking at everyone, just their facade and not realizing that clubs are fucking dangerous, man. I've been to them, when I was younger. I didn't want to be in those places, or even situations where it's just a bunch of, a crowd situation. I got to the point where I get into a crowd situation, or even if it's a festival, I would start to feel drained. Those, masses are feeding frenzy. Clubs are feeding frenzy. There is no legitimate rites of passage to going to a stupid club. It's a club. It's a feeding place for density. If you want to do that, do it at your own risk. Don't sit there thinking that you're doing something that's, enlightening or maturing. You're just doing a bunch of dangerous shit that the system tells you is maturing, and you're believing liars. True rites of passage, if you ever bother to read about any of this stuff, has nothing to do with that. It's about contemplating life, your existence, and generally has to do with also connection to the other realms and the realization that those other realms exist. What is going to a club? How's that going to enlighten you? And there's too many individuals who get into that concept because, again, this group think, people, your age and you want to be part of the in crowd or be accepted, so this is where you go. I like the ones who say, yeah, I went and I don't go anymore. How come you don't go? Because I don't want to go anymore. I don't like those places. I give kudos to those individuals, those who just follow the group and go in there and become victims of that realm. You either learn or you don't. And as far as this concept, which is really just, fragmented. You have 21, which, they're using that, which certain states in the United States, 21 is a legal adult. There are other states where 18 is a legal adult. So, but again, you're going to go in there and shake your booty and attract some dude. Whatever, man. But also, when I thought in terms of if I'm going to look for someone to have a settle down type of relationship, which is kind of a nonsensical concept as well, because it's not designed to work, but I believe in it. I definitely wasn't going to go to a club looking for that mate. Because you go there, a lot of, there's a guy said, she's just like a doorknob. Everybody gets a turn. So it's really contradictory. The whole concept of going to a club and liberating, and it's rites of passage. It's not a rites of passage. It's just going into a freaking hole to be fed on.
Would you like me to share some research, Chief, that we did today?
Sure.
That has to do with, people think, oh, you say clubs are dangerous, but I have a lot of fun. But actually, there's a lot of things that actually, been an article that's been just floating around on the internet really intensely. And it was about the Astro World concert in Houston, Texas. And people were bellyaching about the death toll being, 10 people dying and then 300 injured. But I have so many accounts here that we researched together of so many accounts of what they called crowd surging, which is people stampeding over other people and killing them at clubs, at sports gatherings, at concerts, at religious pilgrimages or religious events, in parades, in festivals, in shopping events, in food distribution experiences, political rallies. All these places have what they call crowd surges where people die. And you have something?
Well, I'm going to say that this came to our attention because it was being, like Mrs.A was saying, broadcast around like this never happens, or that what happened at Astroworld?
Yes, Astroworld.
Astroworld is something that should never happen. This is rarity. And I said, there's something wrong with this. And why are they pointing out this one guy's concert as the go-to concert, as an example for what's really evil in the world? And Mrs.A, said we should do some research on that. Mrs.A did some research on it. And, we'll get back to how it fits into the altering of a person's, I have fun at the club after I chug a few of these and a few of that and pop a few of these. Yeah, I'm having fun, man. All this illusion of having a good time, which is basically opening yourself up to feeding. But going back to, this does connect with crowds. being in crowds. And so, Mrs.A, you can
Sure.
carry up from there.
Is it okay if I start with concerts or should I start with clubs? Which
Well, you can start with concerts, and then we'll go to
back to clubs?
back to clubs.
Okay,
This is what
great.
The, one's about.
So whenever you see something promoted in the news extremely, like everywhere you go, like if I try to put in a concert, I get this stuff about Astroworld, even if I don't want it. That means the system is behind that. And think about
it's a major distraction.
Major. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Chief.
Good.
And so like, so we went back into way back to see where were other times when there were crowd surges at concerts and how many people died, because that will give you a more balanced perspective about this one issue that they try to push. Just like Chief was saying, oh, the boogeyman is Hitler or whoever, you know, the boogeyman is whatever they choose to throw at you. But who are they really hiding? What are they really hiding? And behind everything is the system, really.
Yeah.
And so even back in 1865, you had 20 people dying at the Bell Street Hall in the UK. It also has here, you have 183 people dying in Victoria Hall in 1883 in the UK. Crowd surging. All of this is crowd surging. Every single example I'm going to share with you is people stomping on people, or people starting a fight and then stomping on people. Yeah. And then the next thing, 11 people died in the British rock band concert under the Who, and December 3rd, 1979. And, you know, they were bellyaching about the 10, but there's bigger numbers out there and all over the world. It's not secluded to just Texas. And they have Roskilde Festival in Denmark. There were 9 that died and 26 injured. There is 11 people who died in this Bandung heavy metal band in Indonesia. This was February 9th, 2008. Then there's a Love Parade Music Festival, electronic dance music in Duisburg, Germany, and this is July 24th, 2010. 21 people died, 500 were injured. Let's see. Here is 34 people died, and this is in Guinea, and it was July 29th, 2014. And there's another example in Madagascar, 16 people died, 101 people injured. And then, like I said, recently 10 people died, 300 people injured in the Astro world. So think about it. What are they up to?
Yeah. Why is it that all of a sudden, you know, this is a poster child for what's wrong when it's all wrong? You know, these are sacrifices, by the way. And how even some of the images that Mrs.A saw, that I guess they had from like
an aerial view, yeah,
of the festival, and they managed to catch it. I forgot which one of those festivals it was. Sure. And they managed to catch the crowd from the back pushing to the front, and as they said, it looked like a school of fish.
Yes.
Moving, like, you know, like how schools fish will almost like they're all connected mentally to one another, and they move a certain way, and they're really pushing forward to get the sacrifice. There are a number of these things. If you know the numbers are too low, maybe 1 or 2 people dying, they probably don't say anything about it. But these are places of sacrifice. If you want me to muscle test, I'll muscle test on that. That you know, this is about sacrifice. There are other footage about the astral world where some say that they saw some dense, dark, shadowy figure, you know, descend from the ceiling and start bouncing around throughout the crowd to feed. You know, crowds are not the best places to be. But again, people do what they know they want to do. No skin off my nose. But if you want to know how I feel about it, this is how I feel about it. You don't have any control over a situation when you get into a mass like that. And inevitably, people get hurt. There's all kinds of things besides just, you know, people dying. There's rapes that go on during these things. All kinds of weird and disturbing stuff happens. And it all has to do with feeding. It's a feeding frenzy. And so folks get drugged up or whatever. I don't know, maybe it's just so they don't feel what's really going on there, that it's not a healthy environment to be. So anyway, with that, I don't know if
Chief,
there's something else you wanted to.
someone has a question.
Yes, who has a question?
Would you say like the frequencies of the music help with the rituals at the concert?
Yeah, I would say that the frequency helps with it. Just the whole, you don't even really need even the music, to tell you the truth. It's the energetic vibration coming off of those individuals. Like, who starts pushing forward? Are they getting possessed or something to start this? Because obviously it will not end well for the individuals who were near the front. Somebody doesn't give a rat's butt about the other people. Now, I'm going to push to the front, and we get a mass, and they think it's all funny, because, probably most of them are stoned anyway. But the music can add to it. When I first heard heavy metal years ago, it just sounded like disturbing noise to me. And it still sounds like noise to me. I had a cousin who was into that stuff. There's this guy, this Japanese, I don't know if you'd say, I don't even call him a scientist or whatever, but he was freezing ice and then taking these snapshots of the ice that he was, after he would put these labels on them, with certain words and the meaning of the word, his intent went into the word. So his concept of love, his concept of peace, his concept of whatever. And he had one, where some of them had really pretty crystals and so on and so forth. He had one where he played heavy metal music and it was just distorted. It had no form. It was just a distortion of the energy, literally, that was in the water. So again, people supposedly being 90-some% water, vibration affects water. It's, so these avatars have a lot of water in them. Therefore, whatever frequencies that are being submitted, from the music, but don't underestimate subliminal tonal stuff that goes on as well. If you really pay attention to when your room is quiet and pay attention to your ears, you will always hear a slight ring. And that has to do with what goes on in this atmosphere that supports all of the nonsense that I'm working to destroy.
Thanks, Chief. So to wrap it up and to go back into the 20-something, or if you feel that it would be interesting to go a little bit more, just let me know, because I'll just go ahead with the club information. Is that good, Chief?
You're talking about just the number
history,
of people dying. Yeah, you can do the club thing, then we can go back.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So, for example, there's a club in Chicago called E2 Nightclub, and there was a stampede and 21 people died. And that was in February 17th, 2003. And then there was another nightclub where 12 people died and 13 were injured. It is called News Divine Nightclub in Mexico, and that is June 20th, 2008. And then it was 242 deaths and 168 injuries at a club called Kiss Nightclub in Brazil. This was in January 27th, 2003, and it's pretty wild. It says at least 242 people were killed and 168 injured as a result of a nightclub fire in the city of Santa Maria, South region of Brazil. According to the local authorities, the fire began on stage after members of the band flared a pyrotechnic device that ignited flammable acoustic foam in the ceiling. Other reasons for the high death toll included the lack of emergency exits and the excessive number of people present. There were some times where there was a fire at a nightclub, but most of the people died by stampeding.
Yeah, more people died by stampeding than the actual fire itself. They had one from several years ago in Bangkok, where a club, another would catch, caught on fire, and a number of people, perished in that transition off in that as well. These are sacrifices. So when you're going, to these places, yeah, you may feel like you're surviving, going to the club and coming out. But there are individuals who were practicing what I teach, who went in and felt so confident that they can go into these zones, and so I got my containment or whatever, and so on and so forth. But not realizing the holes in their own mind or keeping, opening things up. Why do you feel you need to be in that situation in the first place? But again, to each their own, but I wouldn't freaking do it. And I stopped that as a young person because I was curious as to what the hell it was about. And it just didn't feel right. And I didn't like getting blasted out of my mind so that I would make myself vulnerable to whoever wanted to freaking run a number on me. Or the insanity that I find still with young women who will go and get drunk in these types of situations. Sometimes they'll do a thing where they have somebody who's on the lookout who's not going to get, toasted like the rest of them, just to make sure that the sharks, stay away from them. But there's times where young women will go in and they make it difficult for the one who's supposedly supposed to keep them out of trouble because they get all toasted, something gets in them, and next thing you know, they're, offering themselves up as bait or as a sacrifice. So again, this thing with I'm this rites of passage. I'm 21, and she might say I'm going to shake my booty instead of shaking my bottom.
Yeah.
I'm going to wear my thong and I'm going to shake my booty. And some gnarly guy come up. No, I'm not shaking my booty for you. I'm shaking it for that guy over there who's interested in these other women and not me. So, they go out like that, they go into situations like that and think that they can cherry pick predators hanging out in those places. And that's another thing that I didn't like when I, happened to go to some of these places, some people that I knew way back when. Predators hang out in those places. Feeders hang out in those places. And a lot of times, depending where you go, fights break out on the regular in a number of these places as well. And that's why they need bouncers.
You were saying, Chief, that there's a lot of competition that's in these clubs too, like who's the prettiest, who's with who can drink the most, who can dance the best.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of competitive, and when you get into competition, there is an aggression. I don't care what someone says, if I'm just competing with this guy for this woman, or this woman for this, the other way around. Competition always has an air of aggression to it. Because I'm trying to beat somebody out, whether it's mentally, psychologically, or physically, where there are guys who will literally go toe to toe, like they're out in the wilderness for some, for a doe, an available doe who's in heat. So they have to fight each other to get to the doe. The difference between out in the wilderness, if the other buck kills the other buck, he doesn't go to jail. As I told my son, units years ago, when he was getting into his teens, I said, don't get into any fights over females, because it can end badly. And if you win, you end up killing somebody, you'll end up in jail. And guess what she's going to do? She's going to find another sucker. So anyway, with all that.
Chief, speaking of aggression, sports events have aggression, and some of their numbers are even higher than any of the numbers I read before. For example, 328 deaths in the National de Lima Stadium in Peru. That happened May 24th, 1964. Mm-hmm. And there's all kinds of examples of stadium fights, whether it's football, soccer, basketball, boxing. If you just do the research, you can find the numbers. Yeah. So instead of just believing any article you find, look up the different aspects to it and contain like mad because
Yeah.
like when I looked up crowd surging examples, the energy was really effed up, and I had to do a lot of containment.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's, for example, there's I even have more examples that have, whenever I was telling you what you can research if you want to learn more about how dangerous crowds can be, is those topics I was saying: religious pilgrimages, religious events, parades, festivals, shopping events, food distribution, political rallies. There's tons of examples. And I, just like when we were just explaining about how there was 100 deaths at the Warwick, Rhode Island, the Station nightclub in February 20th, 2003, 100 deaths, but many deaths there were some deaths by fire, but most by trampling, and being stampede, or what they call crowd surging. So if you use those key terms, crowd surging, stampedes, trampling, shopping events, big time, people being stopped to death. And lastly, there was a 500-person stampede, which caused 19th deaths in the Los Cotoros Club in Venezuela. That was June 16th, 2018.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think that definitely proves the point.
Yeah, and even religious events where people have been stampeded to death.
And sometimes even bigger numbers at religious events, because it's like they're under a spell.
Yeah. So again, these places are sacrifice places if you dare to go in them. So you feel like you survived, but you're not unscathed by it. Going to those zones, I don't give a crap if you came out and felt like, I'm still walking. You're still damaged by it.
Can I ask a question? Mimosa
Yeah.
here.
Go ahead.
Is that the reason why, for example, in the States, Black Friday and Cyber Monday is so big? Because every time I see videos, like people are going crazy and fighting over like different devices or TVs or I don't know, ridiculous things.
Yeah.
Is that why it's so big?
Yeah. Again, what happens on the other side dictates what goes on in this realm. So it is a sacrifice. And what you're saying, I remember before I left the States, because they like to show you sensational stuff, even if you're trying to avoid network TV. But I recall Walmart. They liked Walmart for some reason on was it the Black Tuesday or whatever, or the day after Christmas. And I decided, I was curious about it, because I was never interested in that, to show up at one of these and observe folks running around like crazy. And I walked around to see what was worth all of the hubbub. Nothing. The stuff they were selling was not worth all of the aggravation. They even stampeded and killed the security guard who was supposed to try to keep the crowd under control. This poor guy got this sucky job and get paid that much for it anyway, and they stampeded him and killed him and injured some other people running over each other because they are programmed. So they don't need the rock, heavy metal to mess with people's head. Like I said, you hear that little tone when you get into real silence, in a real silent room, listen to hear that little tone that goes on in your ears. That's the programming. So once you're aware of it, they don't like me telling people this. That's why we have, things try to like mess with the forums or whatever, because I'm telling you what the hell's going on. Why are people, I'm looking at this stuff, and I said, there's not anything that I desire to buy. So I watched, and I ended up just leaving after a while. Because I wanted to observe what the hell, right up close, what the hell, people, it was insane. It was literally insane. Not to mention, since we're, coming into these holiday seasons, the Western holiday seasons, how many people put themselves in debt for tchotchke crap that their kids don't even need? I liked it when I was a kid, and they didn't have credit cards at that time. The folks didn't have the cash for it. They said, tough shit, kid. But they didn't say it like that. They said they didn't have the money for it. Did I throw a tantrum? Did my sibling throw? Oh no. Because they were being honest with us. This is our world. We're not well-heeled individuals. And, you know, and all the stuff you see on the TV or whatever, you know, don't sit there drooling over this stuff. Every so often they would get me something that I really, really wanted. And that was cool. That was good enough for me. So even going back to that, you know, that float where the kid is, you know, he's throwing tantrums and all this other kind of stuff, that wasn't allowed when I was a kid. Oh, corporal punishment is really bad. Sometimes it's good, because that's all some individuals understand. Sometimes they have to yell at clients because sometimes that's all they understand. If you want to deal with it, what I'm teaching you, and you want to come in with this nonsense time after time, I'm not here just to get money. Money supports the movement. You're damn right, you better pay something. But don't think you're coming in just because you're throwing some cash, that I'm going to like let you waste my time. This is a mission. This is a movement. I don't need slackers. And as I said, I will continue to say, I've kicked numerous people off of my client list who are really butt sore about me kicking them off my client list. Some, you know, still to this day, you know, like a year later, hi, I'm apologizing for what I did. Can you please? No, I know who you are. I know what you are. But anyway, before I get too far off on that.
I was thinking, Chief, about some of the posts that you've made, like you were saying that car accidents should be considered a pandemic since they kill more people than any numbers that they've given from, you know, so-called pandemic. But if you think about, we were thinking about crowd surges, they, you know, the numbers of people who are stampeded every year for all the different topics that I just explained, and that alone. And then you were saying, what other things besides car accidents, Chief? Oh,
Had to do with misdiagnosis in hospitals.
Malpractice.
Kill more people a year than when they were, you know, touting this pandemic thing at the beginning of last year. And so they had to try to like bump the numbers up because individuals like myself are like, well, let me see. Why is this such, you know, everybody's, you know, in danger. These numbers aren't that big. They kill more people in hospitals a month than you know, their numbers for the pandemic. They didn't have their shit together, so they didn't do their research. So they wanted you to be afraid of what transitioning. One of the true logics that will the jab save you from the gigantic hail that's still falling from the sky in various places around the globe. So it's an illogical, you know, it's an illogical thing. One thing is that people transition out every day anyway. This is horrible. You might die. Well, the way this system is set up, you're gonna bet on it. You will. So why should I be afraid? They're doing something else.
and
And they're annoyed now because they can't get everybody on board the way they thought they were supposed to get on board. Our signals aren't working the way they used to work. These people are out there protesting, and a lot more protesting, and they're growing also. These protests against this nonsense having to do around this COVID nonsense. You know, they try to hide it at first, but then there were too many people with their, you know, their cameras and their YouTube accounts, and you know, before you got to dig to find it, but now it's kind of percolating, and then they're trying to do damage control with the news and tell you some ridiculous number of in Italy that 80% of the people have been injected already, and then you find that's bull crap. You know, someone in Japan, you know, say, well, are you going to get the, you know, the injection? And you know, and the daughter, you know, was teaching. He said, no, you know. Said, how about you? You know, they said that a lot of people in Japan got it. She said, I don't know any of them. But I got a lot of friends, and none of them have any desire to fall for that nonsense. The old okie doke. So anyway, you're going to say something, Miss A.
oh, that's okay. Well, it has to do with we can either go to the question or go to what I wanted to segue that into.
You can go ahead. We can go ahead and segue, and then we can go back
To the questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was just trying to encourage an interesting kind of thought process and thinking about, people are complaining about the weather and all that. But if you look at all the videos, the death toll from weather, and when Chief said it's a cleansing, is far less than people getting stomped on, crowd surges. So like, what's worse? Why, and like they say, oh, let's get rid of the extreme weather, but not get rid of the Black Tuesday, or not get rid of the sports events, not get rid of the clubbing. Oh no, we need those things, but not the weather. It's like, geez.
Because where they're at right now, they can't control it. And they were blowing hot air people's shorts for a couple decades with this HAARP thing. They can control the weather through HAARP. I said, well, they showed some facility that's supposed to be HAARP. And I said, I'm not buying this, but there are and were things that could affect the weather out there, as far as like entities that could affect the weather. But this, what's going on, is not their doing. And that's why they're whining so hard about it. Before, if there's some, major earthquake, a bunch of people die, landslides and what have you, then they said, oh yes, it's just a shame, natural disastrous thing. Now they're whining about something they can't even control. Like, what are we going to do about the weather? What are you going to do about the weather, Mr. Mighty, whoever the hell you think you are, whoever you want everyone to think you are? So there are things that are going on, like the rainbow clouds and stuff like that. Oh, well, that's, scientists know about that. It has to do with ice crystals and so on and so forth. It's just, it's just a normal thing. I've been around long enough to know. I've seen rainbows, man. I haven't seen crap like that. It's insane. They're losing. They're losing. That's what's going on. And they want everyone. It's like, the brutalizer brutalizes everyone. All of a sudden is whining, and they want the brutalized to feel empathy for them losing their position as top of the heap. That's what's going on. If you believe any stuff, and you fear any of what's going on here, you've been drinking the Kool-Aid for way too long. But these son of bitches, they don't care about you. They care about themselves and their little jerky system. They don't care about you. Those that say, well, you should do social distancing and you should do what they tell you to do. You're just a victim. And you're just a sap. They don't like you. All the experimentation they were doing, trying to get their vaccine together, and they stopped counting after 600 people died from the experiments. They don't like you. Anyway.
Yes, Chief. Just as a segue, would you say that there's a lot of brutalizers who are actually little children inside? Because it's a segue to the next question, which is, why does density focus so much on the concept of healing the inner child, or what the inner child is? And there's some confusion that the system brings, that the inner child is the ego, maybe because when people are childish, they have a huge ego. I don't really know. But what are your thoughts on that, Chief?
Well, as you know, and some know we've talked about it, it's just a bunch of nonsense. It's another catchphrase. It goes along with the question about was it going backwards as far as like your memories as a child and so on and so forth. They're trying to tell you that by some miracle you missed your childhood. So you need to go back and embrace your childhood. Also, it's this thing, you need to go back when you were more ignorant and we can control you much more easily. Later for the inner child. Just so that I did that, was it the true logic about the inner child. Later for the inner child, find your higher consciousness. Who needs more childlike minds in the world? That's a problem in this world already, because the world is run by toddlers. That's why nothing works. That's why it's always rhetoric and nothing gets done. The great thing about being mature and being around, as long as I have in this particular expression, I paid attention. Rhetoric, 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 no change. So, well, so they're no longer warring there. Yeah, because you took it and you moved it over here. So now these poor saps are getting their butts removed. It's all been a game. So this inner child nonsense is nonsense. I don't give a shit if you believe in it. Challenge me. Challenge me and tell me that that crap works. It can't. And I put it out there before, and guess what? Crickets. Because you're just following a meme. You're not even thinking. Because if you start thinking, you know, like the other true logic, why does my mind hurt? Because you never used it. The system's been thinking for you all along. When you start thinking for yourself, it feels weird. You know, all of a sudden there's things bumping in the night. Yeah, because they liked it better when you were ignorant. If you push through it, you realize they're all smoke and mirrors. They can only do so much to you. But if you're afraid, yeah, you're giving them the power to beat you down. You stand in your own power, you do your containment, hit these suckers with the containment, that juice I'm giving you. See how far they get with this, I'm going to scare you stuff. I'm going to whisper in your ear. I'll say do an energy elbow. You hear fear them in the back, whispering in your ear. Just like that, my intent. That's the juice I'm giving you. You can use that. Contain these idiots so that you can actually continue and get back on your real journey in the universe. Not this circular, you know, true nonsense that's going on. So anyway,
Yes, Chief. We have about 7 minutes left.
okay.
And I can either go into a little bit more in depth of what research, or I can. There's one last.
We had another question.
Yes, one last question. There, it says astrologists say every time it's someone's birthday, the stars are aligned according to the time and date of the birth of that individual. Does that matter at all?
Okay, with this one, we're going to do a muscle test.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to verify what I'm about to say. And those who are clients, they know how the muscle test works. Those who are in the studio, they know, because I used to use your arms to do the muscle test. And something's already upset about it, and good. I like upsetting them.
And recently with all the weather, it seems like they've been running to their so-called astrologists or scientists to just tell them something to comfort them and keep them in a fantasy or in a lie.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks who prefer that that someone lied to them to make them feel more comfortable than to tell them the truth. And there's times when, yeah, they feel like they dodged a bullet just by being ignorant of things, but this is no bullet that you can dodge. So it's best to be aware of what's going on. And like I said, on a lot of different levels, but 3 main ones that I've mentioned before. Beings in the sky, that the government of the United States government decided, okay, yeah, they do this, so these extraterrestrials, yeah, we've been telling you they don't. The second one, paranormal stuff. So that just changes.
Nope, keep going, boss.
So paranormal things that are going on. It's the things that people are seeing that aren't supposed to be there. All of a sudden, those who feel things around them, all of a sudden they're starting to see the things that they were feeling. Sensitives are seeing more of what's going on around them. And a number of them are happy that they managed to find me through whatever source that they found me, because I can tell them what's going on. That no one else around them could. So that's scary. I don't know. Individuals who would take to drinking and drug use, to escape it. It's not because they were susceptible, to being an addict. They're trying to hide from all these things that are terrifying them, that they've been programmed to be afraid of. So when I go in, I'm knocking out that urge to do drugs or to be an alcoholic and so on and so forth. So we're talking about, astrological signs or the positioning of the stars. Make sure the arm's working. Okay. One, again, this has not been just original to me. There's been a theory for a long time by however these guys got their information that what you were seeing in the cosmos is a hologram. It is a hologram. And say they don't like it. And some of you were believing in that, and that's your stuff. That's that's Mrs.A is tapping into. Because you want to believe in the New Age, which ain't about nothing. You ever heard of the term the circle jerk? That's what New Age is. That's what a lot of this stuff is. New Age doesn't have a form of religion. Circle jerk means you're not going anywhere but in a circle. So, parts of the hologram are being destroyed. Those fireballs, I don't know if any of you have been paying attention to that. And we stopped really finding the count for them. But I think in August, the count was some 90-some fireballs that they were calling meteorites or whatever. They were counting over 90-something of them in August. They're still happening. You know what those are? Those are part of the hologram coming down. You know why this is part of the hologram? Every time they look to see where the meteor hit, they can't find anything.
They try to make fake ones to trick people.
Yeah, they actually made some fake ones that really
Pretty
just,
bad.
they did that was so bad that,
They had spray paint on them.
yeah, I can't even think of it, but I sense the stuff anyway. My sensory for what's happening and what is and what isn't is extremely strong. And then we back it up also with muscle testing as well. We do as much research as we can because this is the sea of lies, as you know, which means you have to navigate through all of the lies and to get the little pieces of the truth.
Fear is coming out of them right now.
Yeah, so so what you may feel as fear is your MCs.
Ah!
They want you to think that it's you that's afraid. You are more than likely empathing the density. If you can actually get into your muscle testing enough and practice, you can actually get that information for yourself as am I empathing. And if you say I'm empathing, you say and your finger goes like that, you are empathing. If I say I'm empathing, and it doesn't go down, you still, in other words, you're not releasing that finger, you're trying to keep it as stiff as you can. Am I empathing, or are certain members of the audience empathing? Yes. There are those of you who are empathing the density and the fear that you're feeling is their fear.
I'm afraid that people will believe it's a hologram.
It is a hologram, and it's coming down. Even things having to do with the Northern Lights. They're different this year. And I think they started being different last year, but they were more different this year. So things are changing. But they want you to think that it's just the weather that's changing reality. You know what started changing reality? When they started getting all uncomfortable about all the crafts that have been flying around. They started changing it when they try to force you to take injections and things like that. First, they're going to suggest it scare you. It didn't scare enough people. Then they tried another, and they wouldn't let it go. and then now we're forcibly going to make you do it, or you're going to lose your job. Damn it. They're frightened. Why would they, do this threatening thing if they weren't frightened? You know what they're afraid of? They're afraid of you really understanding what is really going on this planet. So they want to shut you down. Injections will shut you down. They started this crap when I was a kid. My little injection scar here when I was a little kid to go to school. I have this nasty ass scar on my arm. And a lot of people's arm of the generation that I came in with. It was always to shut you down. Kids used to see, this was in a story in Africa, it had to do with this guy, Peter Mutwa, wrote this book, South Africa, where the children, it was normal for them to see, craft going, it wasn't an unusual thing. But the center of the bullshit coming out of the West, no, those don't exist. Those don't exist. You're crazy if you believe that they exist. He said that this all, the West came down there, said, oh, we're going to inoculate your kids, going to help their health, so they can live longer and healthier, polio or whatever crap they pulled out of their rectum that time. And they gave these kids shots. And then the kids couldn't see the crafts anymore. So going back to the whole thing of born under a certain star and all, that crafts never helped anybody. I've been around people like that, a whole lot of them. It was kind of a fun thing, look at the zodiac signs or whatever. That's some hit and miss if I ever heard of it. And then you start to try to find anything that, sounds similar to what you're dealing with or what you think your personality is. It's all busy work. It's all a distraction. It's not real. Every so often, there's a meteorite that's so big, it'll destroy Earth. And you know who fall for it? The Chicken Littles. The sky is falling. Oh, it's coming here. What's going to happen to us? I don't know. But it's not real. Because guess what? It always misses. One after the next, misses. They're just conjuring up all this essence of fear. So anyway.
You know how they say wish upon a star?
Mm-hmm.
So if stars are part of the hologram, they're just feeding them again.
Yeah, literally. Well, again, I won't get too much into religion, but symbols that are given to individuals as religious symbols by the system. And there are individuals who really swore by their items, the religious items. And density just came in, and the one item they had on the wall, and they do their prayers and so on and so forth. And this one fella, he's a sensitive. And he felt like something had to do with black spiders or whatever crawling on him. He turns around and he looks at this item on the wall, and a nice sized black spider crawls out from behind it. He got the good book when he was incarcerated. And for some reason, from what I was telling him, he said, can you check this book for me? I said, okay. And as soon as he brought it in, it was empathing the hell out of it. I could feel it. I said, there's some real nasty stuff in that. So I said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to open it up, and you're going to put flour salt between every page. And just me saying that, he said, all of a sudden the stench started to fill the room coming from this item. So they're never going to give you anything that will help you against them. So I don't care how devout people are and whatever they believe. It's whatever you want to believe it. I'm going to tell you the truth. The system gave it to you. just to keep you walking in the same circle over and over and over. And when they really want to terrorize you, it's like those old movies with the vampire and throwing holy water, and they start making these movies where they're throwing holy water at this vampire, and they got the garlic, and they're shaking it at him, and they got the cross, and they're doing all this. And the vampire's, that doesn't work on me. Well, I was told it works on you. It's like what came up during the, I guess, the exorcism. That had to do with them literally orchestrating everything. Even when people think that they're being this wonderful athlete, or whatever, or this wonderful, pop star or whatever, there's a lot of soul selling going on in that. I said, yeah, we'll give you this. And you see stories about it all the time, but somehow it doesn't register. This, this is fake. No, it's real. That's where the stories come from. They're real. But I don't know if we're going over.
Well, you could say that
Yeah.
they sign
I do.
Yeah, just a second, hold a second.
Yeah.
Okay, now, okay, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to interrupt. I just want to let you know that we're over 6 minutes over already.
Okay, yeah, that's why I was asking. Thanks for informing me, because I was asking to say about that. So we're going to wrap it up. This one's a little more enthusiastic than I had planned, but anyway, I feel that it's necessary. Okay, so Mrs.A, so with anything you want to, because you were getting ready to say something,
Yeah, I
and then we can just wrap it up.
just lastly, you were talking about people, everything is an illusion. So even those who, they made a nice contract to, be a sports star or whatever, but like you said, their consciousness gets bumped aside and there's an entity in there that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's not that that person has zero talent, but that thing in them does a lot of the heavy lifting. And you can see a lot more paranormal videos of their hands shifting into claws or their eyes shifting into snakes, or even the number on their jersey changing from 13 to 14, and then their hand turning wispy and disappearing in some way.
Yeah, the one with the numbers changing, like right in the middle of the game.
Right, yeah.
It's not like you went and took his shirt off and put another one on. The number literally changed. And then we said, well, okay, see if that's some Photoshop deal or some, camera magic. And they couldn't even figure it out. And then I verified that it was real, and it is real, and that's what's going on. So again, what's going on in the skies, what's going on paranormally, and what's going on with the weather. Yet again. And put all three of those together and quit being afraid, because the fear you are most likely feeling is the things that are attached to you or your MCs. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. And I appreciate everyone again for attending, and I appreciate you all for your questions. And you have a good one. Okay.
Thank you.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Power button hasn't appeared yet. All right.